Hey, what's up? This is Scott with Level Up Tutorials, and in this video, we're going to be talking about how to create your own custom method within your component, and then how to fire that method, how to run that method using an onClick event. So we're basically going to be first creating the method and then creating the onClick and talking a little bit about that. So let's get going on that right now. Okay, so in the last video we covered state, and we had this really sort of non-practical example. We just set the state to value of 1 when we loaded up the application, and the moment that the component rendered, we reset the value to 20 by taking the current value and incrementing it by 19. Now, what we want to do here is actually have a button rigged up to increment this whenever we click it. Now, this seems like pretty rudimentary, but it's a nice technique to show what you can do with click events and how you can have your own function within an object. It basically shows a lot of nice foundational techniques that are going to be useful once we're building something practical. Okay, so the first thing we need to know is that we have these default React methods like component, didMount, getInitialState, render, get default props, prop types is an object here, but all these things are things that React sort of knows how to handle. Now, if we were to make our own method in here, which you certainly can do and will do often, React doesn't necessarily know what to do with it until you explicitly state what to do with it. So, for instance, if we were to have a method here, this can be like handle click or increment value or something like that. A good practice is to start this method with an underscore so that you know that this is a custom method for this component. Now the underscore isn't required, but it's nice to see and a lot of people recommend it. So we can say underscore and we can just say add by 1 in camel case like so. Now add by 1, and then we can have a colon and a function just like we've been doing. Now we can have some brackets here and a comma. Can't forget that comma. Okay, so this is now going to be a method that is run on our site whenever we essentially tell it to run. For instance, if we want this to fire on a click, we have to have an onClick event to trigger this function. Let's go ahead and do a console log. We can say console.log, and we can just say click, like so. Now let's come down to our component. And under this state value, let's add a button. We can just add a button, and we don't need a type here. We can just simply say, click me. Brilliant, okay? Now, what we can have is an onClick in camel case property onto this element here. Now, we can say equals. Now, it's important not to use quotes here because passing in quotes to this is essentially just passing this to a string. Since we want this to run a JavaScript function, if you remember, to do that, we need the brackets to run JavaScript. So we can say brackets, and inside of here, what we want to say is this, referring to this current component that we're in, and then we're going to say dot underscore add by 1, which is our current method. Now, it's important to note that what we don't want is we don't want the parentheses here. We're going to go over that in a second, but don't worry about that. What we need here is this dot add by 1. Now, let's head to our site here, load it up, and you don't see anything, but when we click on this click me, we do get click fired over here. Okay, so let's refresh this page. Now let's head back to our code and let's actually come back here and add these parentheses. Now let's refresh our page, and what you see is some interesting stuff happening. We have click being fired twice. So this is precisely why you do not want to have these parentheses here, because it's going to run this function, and you might be wondering why in the world you would ever want to do that. Well, for instance, let's say if we had a function up here that was simply something like, I'm just going to give this a name like hello function, and you don't have to type this. This is just an example here. We're going to delete it in a second. We can say return, and inside of this return statement, we can simply just pass this in and h1 hello. Okay. Now, if we wanted to have this render in our render function, we could simply say this dot underscore hello. Now with the parentheses, you'll see what happens when we run this. We do get hello output. So obviously in this case, we want this to be output, and that's going to be helpful later on down the road. So just know that when we have this dot add by 1, we do not want the parentheses here, or else it's going to automatically run. Okay, let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of that. Back to where we were. Now we can just take this value, this set state right here. Let's cut this completely out of here. Let's actually just copy this dot set state here. I'm actually going to cut it, not copy it. And I'm going to paste it inside of here instead of this on click. Now we can increment the value every single time by 19, even though we said we had incremented by 1, so let's change that to 1. That way this is truthful. Okay, so now what's going to be happening is when we click on click, it's going to hit this add by 1. It's going to set our state to the current state plus 1. So you should see this be counting up every single time we click. Refresh, we should see 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, beautiful. So every single time I'm clicking, it's incrementing this value, it's updating on the screen, and we're not having to do anything to say, hey, update this value on the screen. React's like, you know what, I got that, no problem. So we are now successfully modifying state. We have a click event going, and we have sort of the foundation set up to be able to create a real sort of practical app. So in the next few videos, we're going to be making a contacts list app that allows you to not only animate in contacts and things like that, but have a really nice looking interface. So as always, this is Scott with Level Up Tutorials. If you have any questions or comments, leave a comment in the video or hit me up at Twitter or Facebook at Level Up Tutorials. Also, if you head over to store.leveluptutorials, you can see that Next Level CSS Transitions and Animations is now for sale. This is the first premium tutorial package from Level Up Tutorials. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes just about of practical CSS animations examples, where basically you learn how to create not only practical but performative animations and sort of the process and thought that needs to go behind when crafting your own animations and your custom interactions. If you'd like to help support me creating free tutorials, this is a great way to do so with these 16 high-quality video tutorials, code examples, and templates. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.